This is your good friend TheMovieCuban, and I am here today to do for you a very quick rundown of the setup that I'm currently using on this witch doctor of mine in Diablo 3 patch 2.4.2. Now, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Carnevil build. It was really popular back in the day, where you would just run around with wearing your Zunimasa set with your permanent fetish army, and then you'd run either the belt of Transcendence and then use Haunt, or you would just run the Fetish Sycophants passive and wear like a Witching Hour or whatever. But now that Zunimasa's is pretty much not competitive once again, I figured I'd let you guys see what I'm doing in order to fill in that gaping hole that is the correct setup to run a somewhat viable Carnevil build. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a discussion of the skills. Oh, excuse me. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning and I am rather tired. That's why this video is going to be a little quicker than the other ones I usually do. So, for our skills, we are running Poison Dart, Snake to the Face. We are running Grasp of the Dead, Unbreakable Grasp. We are running Fetish Army, Legion of Daggers. We are running Gargantuan Humongoid, Spirit Walk Jaunt, Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance, Fetish Sycophants, Pierce the Veil, Midnight Feast, Swampland Attunement, and if you can get a 5th passive, like what I am currently running, I would recommend Confidence Ritual. Ooh, excuse me. Now, we're running Poison Dart, Snake to the Face, and Grasp of the Dead, Unbreakable Grasp, because these two skills are going to proc your Bane of the Trapped here. So that's just going to help you do a lot more damage. Then aside from Bane of the Trapped, we are going to use the Enforcer Gem to raise the damage of our pets and make them take less damage. And then we are going to run Simplicity Strength to make Poison Dart hit a little bit harder and to give us some healing as we're spamming these darts. Now, as you can see, I'm running my Hellfire Amulet here with the Confidence Ritual passive. I'm running the Carnevil Helm so that the fetishes closest to me will shoot a poison dart every time I do. We are of course running Legacy of Nightmares, so you will need the Wailing Host and Litany of the Undaunted, and please do remember Ancients are best for these, so try and make sure that every piece of gear that you have is Ancient, because I'm sorry. So make sure everything you have is ancient, because for every ancient piece you have, you gain 100% increased damage and 4% damage reduction. So, aside from Legacy of Nightmares and the Carnevil and the Hellfire Amulet, we're going to run the Aquila Cuirass to give us some more damage reduction, since we're not going to be using any mana for this build, which means that this damage reduction buff is going to be going all the time. For a belt, I'm running the String of Ears. I would rather be running an Ancient Witching Hour, but I don't seem to have one that I can spare for this Witch Doctor, so I'm using String of Ears for now. I'm running the Lakuni Prowler Bracers simply for the automatic attack speed roll that they get, because that does come in handy. For gloves, I didn't really have a good pair of Taskers and Theos, which is what I'm currently working on finding for this. So until I can find an ancient pair of those, I'm just using these really good ancient Helltooth gauntlets that I have. And then for the shoulders, I am running some ancient Jade Harvester pieces. If I was going to make a recommendation, shoulder-wise, you should probably aim to try and find Pauldrons of the Skeleton King for that chance at an extra resurrection. I'm wearing Swampland Waders. This is a pair of waders that I found before they got retooled, as you can tell, because there is no secondary ability on these. Because, frankly, I don't have an ancient pair of Swampland Waders that have the new abilities. I do have this pair, but I don't feel like losing out on that damage just yet. Though, not to mention, I don't use sacrifice, so it's kinda just useless that, I would be wearing a pair with the ability that are not ancient. So, it is what it is. So aside from the Swampland Waders, I'm wearing just an ancient pair of Zunimasas. Ideally, you will be looking for an ancient pair of illusory boots, so that you can run through all your enemies without any issues. For my offhand, I am running an ancient homunculus. This is just so that I can have some zombie dogs, because otherwise there's no room on my toolbar for them, and they do a little bit of damage, as well as just keeping mobs off of me a little bit more. So that's why we're running that. And then in my weapon slot, I'm running an ancient Star Metal Kukri, just so I can get some better cooldown. Oh jeez, I'm sorry I keep doing that. So I can get some better cooldown for my Fetish Army and my Big Bad Voodoo. Now, when it comes to the kanai slot, or the kanai cube, we're running Dagger of Darts so that our darts pierce, and so that we're hitting more enemies and all that. I'm running the Mask of Jerem so I can increase all my pets' damage by 100%. And then I am running the Short Man's Finger so that I can have more powerful gargantuans. because they do a lot of damage between Short Man's Finger and Legacy of Nightmares. So it's nice. It's very nice. Paragon wise, you could probably sing along with me at this point as to how I do that. You need to max out your movement speed, then dump the rest into intelligence. For the offensive tab, I would recommend starting with critical hit chance and damage, and then worry about attack speed and cooldown reduction. Resist all, armor, life percent, life regen, and then area damage, resource cost reduction, life per hit, and gold find. So without further ado, just to show you that this build is okay, I'm going to show you that it can in fact run at the very least Torment 13, because I know I got a couple complaints from people for my my Wave of Light Monk build guide video, because they were like, oh, it can only do T10, what are you doing? But you know, so basically all you're doing is you're running through, of course, shooting your darts, hit them with Grasp of the Dead to get your Bane of the Trap proccing, if you're not close enough that it already does that. Make sure you remember to resummon your fetish army every 30 seconds or so, because otherwise they will wear off. And the last thing that this build wants is for you not to have as many fetishes as you can on the field, because the fetishes are going to be helping you deal a huge chunk of your damage. Some alternate choices for skills that I didn't go over earlier. If you don't feel like using Grasp of the Dead, and you're not afraid of having a few seconds in the rotation where you're not being buffed by your Aquila Cuirass for damage reduction, then I would say that you can do you could go ahead and choose Pyranado instead, just to give you some more crowd control or whatever. But I chose Grasp of the Dead and the Cold Rune simply because it gives me crowd control for free, because the rune I'm using removes the cost of Grasp of the Dead, so then you only have to worry about an 8-second cooldown. So that is pretty nice, I will say. Another thing you could possibly do is, if you're worried about survivability and you're not interested in so much in crowd controlling or getting a proc for your Bane of the Trapped via like a skill, then I would say you can always opt instead for Soul Harvest, and then I would just swap out the Lakuni Prowlers for an ancient pair of Lakumba's Ornament, and then you can get some additional damage reduction that way, which I don't think is a bad way to go about it at all. I do notice a lot of times, because of how Glass Cannon I've set up this build, um, if you get caught in the middle of a really bad Affix Swarm, or you get hit by a really hard-hitting monster, particularly in the higher difficulties, then you will die. That is just that's just unavoidable, particularly as you get higher and higher in difficulty, because then everything just starts hitting you like a truck, and witch doctors are not known for being the tankiest class out there. That's kind of a little bit of why I miss the Zunimasa set, simply because of the additional pet-based damage reduction that that particular set provided. But it's alright. Because even without Zuni, you can still run a pretty decent pet setup. Um, as you can see, I'm running every kind of pet basically that you can run for the Witch Doctor in this setup, and I'm not doing terrible damage. Um, I'm ahead of time still for the Rift. I mean, this isn't gonna do you anything like... You're not gonna be speed rifting high greater rifts, but if you want to run in a group on like Torment 13, and you don't really want to worry about going through the somewhat convoluted mess that is trying to run the Ring of Emptiness Helltooth setup and whatever, then I would say, go ahead and give this setup a try. It's not terrible. I do enjoy it. Not so much in these somewhat open-ish kind of areas, but when you get to the really enclosed boards for greater rifts, then you can just group up a bunch of enemies and then just absolutely melt them away. I'm going to be, I have a little bit of work that I need to do in the next coming days, but I do plan on, testing out this build some more and seeing just how high in the greater rifts I'll be able to get before I just cannot go any further. Because I have not done a greater rift test as to just how viable this build is yet, because I've been really busy either working or staying at a family's house, and I actually just got back yesterday from a 2 day long fantasy football draft party. Uh, Me and my fellow league members rented out a hotel room, and we just kind of partied it up there for a couple of days. That's why I'm yawning so much, actually. I didn't get much sleep, as you can imagine. So I'll probably go to bed right after I finish uploading this video. But, there we go. And just like that, we finished the rift with half the time, well, with 5 whole minutes left to spare. So, like I said, it's not terrible. It'll certainly get you to the point where you're able to at least farm Torment 13 solo. I can't speak for how well it's going to be able to do in group setups. I haven't tried it out in a group game yet. I just have not been on to try and do that. But I think that is where I'm going to go ahead and end this video, guys. So I just want to thank you all for watching today. Go ahead and try out the build. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions, feel free to comment those down below. I always like to hear from people, and I always love to hear people's recommendations as to how I can make my builds better, because it's Diablo 3. It's all about that constant improvement, isn't it? But I'm gonna go to bed now, guys. So until I see you next time, this is your good buddy, TheMovieCuban, and I'm signing out.